So welcome, thank you for coming. I will acknowledge now, we just talked about this, you'll notice that everyone from the city is wearing jeans today. It's not because we didn't take this seriously. It's because today is Denim Day in the City of Pasadena, which is a part of Sexual Violence and Assault Awareness Month, and the day that we sort of wear jeans to call attention to that issue for the city. So today happens to be that day. So I'm in my jeans. And we all are, as you'll see. So I know you would never know, actually, but you're gonna have to just talk. Okay, there we go. So the format tonight is that we'll have a little welcome from my friend, Dr. Schuster. I'm just gonna get rid of that chair. And then we will talk with Joaquin Siques, who is the new Director of Transportation for the City of Pasadena, but not new to the City of Pasadena. Then we'll have a little presentation about a particular program that's coming up, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. So, so gear up and we're ready for you. My friend, Dr. Mark Schuster, is the founding dean of the Kaiser Permanente Bernard J Tyson School of Medicine. They wanted to keep that short on a business card, I guess. He's been the dean for almost 7 years. So when Mark came here, they had just barely broken ground on this building. And since then, they completed this beautiful building that I think will be a landmark in our city for a long time to come, and have welcomed 4 classes or 3 of students. 4 classes of students, the first of whom will graduate in just a few weeks at the Civic Center. And those students are attending tuition free, which is an amazing, amazing gift to the community and to the world of medicine. Prior to his role at this school, Dr. Schuster was the William Barenberg Professor of Pediatrics at Harvard Medical School. You might have heard of it. And Chief of General Pediatrics and Vice Chair of Health Policy at Boston Children's Hospital. He's a member of the National Academy of Medicine, and he's received the St. Jean Award, the highest honor for a pediatrician. The school opened in July of 2020. You may recall that there was a lot going on in July of 2020, and somehow they managed still to pull it off and make it happen. Under Mark's leadership, the school has admitted 4 classes, and the first will graduate, as I said, in just a few weeks. All of the school's graduating students have been matched to residencies as of last month, which is a wonderful result for any medical school and quite an achievement. So congratulations to them. The school is a wonderful addition to our district. Dr. Schuster is moving on, I think, after this year, I'm sad to say, but he's here to welcome us today. So please welcome Dr. Mark Schuster.
Thank you, Jason. That chair was actually one of my props, but I'll wing it without it. No, I'm joking. I don't know what it was doing there. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you all, constituents of District 7. Yes, we do have a long name, but we are proud of our namesake, and anywhere I go, I always say the entire name, and thank you for doing the same. I was asked to share a little bit tonight about our school and our students, and as you know, we are a new addition to the city, and as you said, we welcomed our first class in July of 2020. It was a very complicated time. We weren't sure we'd be able to open, but we did, and we opened in person. And one nice thing about having a new school is that you only have 1 class, so you can spread out 6 feet apart, wear masks, and do everything, because we just moved all of our small classes into much larger rooms, and it worked. We are a school that embraces innovation and is seeking to reinvent medical education, and we also are seeking to create a fully inclusive environment. We're a school that is focused on health and not just disease, prevention and not just treatment, and a recognition that the greatest influences on people's health whether it's violence, pollution, poor nutrition, or a whole host of other factors, occur well beyond the clinic in people's daily lives, in your home, in your school, in your workplace, in your neighborhood, and we really try to teach that to our students. Our first class of students does graduate on May 13th. We're really excited about it. It'll be right down the street at the Civic Auditorium. I'm sure most of you or all of you have been inside, and it's an amazing building, and we feel really lucky to be able to graduate there. I want to make sure that you know that our students are amazing. That is a fact. And I'm a very proud pop-up right now, aren't I? And they're compassionate, they're charismatic, they're engaged in what's going on in the world. Our admissions team does an amazing job, and we're really appreciative of them. We pride ourselves on putting equity, inclusion, and diversity at the fore throughout the school, and that has attracted a very vibrant group of students. We have almost twice the national average in percentage of students who come from backgrounds that are underrepresented in medicine, and we have about twice the national average of students who are the first in their family to go to college, and we were rated, actually the new ratings just came out again, I haven't announced this at the school yet, we were tied for 5th most diverse medical school in the country, and that's really amazing. For our curriculum, we use a case-based approach. It's an active learning approach. Our students, they meet in small groups. They have for most of the classes, there are 2 faculty with 8 students. It's a flipped classroom approach, which means that they watch videos, they read materials, they engage in exercises related to the work, and then they come to class ready to engage, ready to problem solve with each other, ready to actively learn. We want them to be lifelong learners, and one of the ways you do it is by problem solving and in teams, because medicine is a team sport. Might not have used to be, but it is now, and so we really want them to learn how to work with each other to do the best they can for their patients. The structure of our curriculum is pretty distinct. We don't have a biochemistry class for a semester or an anatomy class. What we do is we go through each organ system and we cover everything together. Although we keep coming back, we have a spiral curriculum, so we come back to the same material over time, going deeper each time. But let me give you an example. We teach the histology and physiology. I know those are words that we don't all know what they mean, but we teach basic science about the heart at the same time that we're teaching prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of heart attacks, myocardial infarctions. And at the same time, we're teaching that women receive worse quality of care than men for a heart attack, and people of color receive worse quality of care than people who are white. All of this is integrated, and we think that's a really valuable way to teach. Another thing that's distinct is that our students begin in the clinical settings in the 3rd week of school. That's a year or 2 earlier than what you typically do in medical school. They spend a half day a week in an internal medicine or family medicine clinic in Kaiser Permanente in the integrated care system that's an incredible gift to our students to get to learn in. And that's also going really well. I'll say one more thing that's kind of distinct about our school that people always ask me about. We do not have traditional cadaveric dissection. We don't have traditional cadavers. Our students learn anatomy with augmented reality. They learn it with plastination, which is Body Worlds, which was at the Science Center, California Science Center a while ago, and with imaging, which is, CAT scans and MRIs and ultrasound. And that's the way most physicians use anatomy, and that's the way we teach it. And that's been really exciting. Everything I'm describing, a lot of other schools have been visiting us to learn how we do it, how we do anatomy, how we do our cases, how we work on equity, inclusion, and diversity, student health and well-being. There's a lot of burnout and depression among medical students and physicians nationally, and we're really trying to address it. And let me also say, we learn constantly from our students as well as our faculty and staff. Our curriculum now is so much better than when we opened in July of 2020 because everyone here has just continued to help us make it better. And that's been a really nice part of being at a new school, that we're all just always looking to improve. And our Associate Dean for Assessment and Evaluation is actually sitting in the back, who I guess she's a constituent of yours, Jason. She'll vote for you for the rest of her career here. And so she's a big part of it, Dr. Carla Lupi. So I just wanted to acknowledge Carla. I also wanted to mention our building. I hope it is a landmark in Pasadena for years to come. We're really proud of the building. I want to thank the Pasadena Planning Commission and the city's Planning and Community Development Department for all of their help in getting this building done. You all know, a lot goes into that, and the city really mattered. Some of you may be a part of those too, and there may be others who also worked on it. Andy was in office at the time. I think he tried to slow it down, but we overcame that. Andy Wilson, your former city councilor. The building is designed, I hope you noticed when you came in that we have an entire skylight that's massive. It's designed to have the Pasadena light come in. One of our big recruiting tools is it's Pasadena. It's really nice here and it's sunny and it's beautiful. The prices kind of scare people off a bit, but we use everything else to counter that. We also wanted to create a space that encourages collaboration and working together. I've already said it's small groups. So we have sofas like you saw in the lobby. We have rooms where one person can study, but also rooms where several can work together. We just have lots of different types of spaces to encourage working in groups. And that's also been nice. On our fourth floor, we are more focused on health and well-being. We have a meditation area. We have a yoga garden. We have an indoor-outdoor gym because it's Pasadena, so you can actually work out outside. And a teaching kitchen where our students can learn how to cook healthier foods. And we have a whole elective in healthy eating and cooking, which is nice. I should say our students love ping pong. We have ping pong up there too. But ever since we opened, our community has made this city our home and has sought to take full advantage of everything that Pasadena has to offer. Many of us have enjoyed hiking in Eaton Canyon. We walk our dogs throughout the District 7 neighborhoods. We always clean up their poo, I promise you. We shop at the Saturday Farmers Market at the Pasadena High School. It's a short walk for us up to Colorado and over to Lake at lunchtime or over to Old Pasadena at dinner time. We've had a school retreat and a tour at the Norton Simon, and we've cheered on the Tournament of Roses Parade. Our Senior Associate Dean for Admissions and Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity was in the role of the Wizard of Oz on the KP float a few years ago. Our school has been featured, and some of our students and other faculty have been on our floats as well. We're fortunate to have the Pasadena Playhouse just a few blocks away. They're amazing. I hope you know that. I hope you've all checked them out. Go check out Jelly's Last Jam, which is opening next month. Of course, there's the Rose Bowl, where we've caught concerts. Some of us have gone to watch a football game, and then there's, of course, the flea market. It's just an amazing place. Our school actually loves it most because that's where our 5K Pride Run is every June. I want to say it's not just all the famous attractions of Pasadena that we have benefited from. It's also the day-to-day support. The city officials have been very accessible and welcoming to us, and starting a new school and building a building is a big journey, and you've been there for us. We've been represented by terrific city council members, Andy and now Jason. I want to thank both of you for all you've done. Andy, wake up from your iPhone. Andy's always multitasking. I also want to call out the public health director, the chief public health officer, Dr. Ying Go, who was phenomenal. We could not have opened without her. If we'd not been in Pasadena, but in the other parts of LA County, we would not have been able to open. She allowed us to call her at any time of day or night, and she was always awake and working. And she really made it possible for us to open the school and follow all the safety guidance and really protect our community. And so I know she's not here right now, but a shout out to her. You should arrange for her to get a raise. Yeah, okay. We're also thrilled to partner with other great institutions in Pasadena. We have students in a dual degree MD, PhD program with Caltech. They get their MD here their PhD program there. And we have Caltech represented in the back. Thank you. We also, our students have been invited to do research at Huntington Medical Research Institutes and at Doheny Eye Institute, which is really very generous that our students get the benefit of them as well. We're also building relationships with the Pasadena Unified School District, the Pasadena Health Department, I've already mentioned Yingo, Union Station Homeless Services, Friends Indeed. We had, I'll just give you one example, students from Blair High School came by and visited, and it really made us feel great because they were so excited to visit a medical school and meet real faculty. It was just really nice to see them here, and we hope other students will visit as well. We have a community engagement stakeholder committee that works closely with our school, and there are representatives from many organizations. I'll mention just two: Pasadena Senior Center and Planned Parenthood Pasadena, and Pasadena and San Gabriel Valley are part of it as well. And our Associate Dean for Community Engagement and Government Affairs, Lori Carter-Edwards, is standing in the doorway, as is Rose Rodriguez, who is our representative to the community. And so both of them are great people for you to connect with if you're interested in learning more about how we would love to partner with our local community. Just want to end by thanking you, Jason. Thank you for having your meeting here. We really feel privileged to have you have it here. Thank you. And thank you for all you do for the community and for including our school in your community.
Mark, that was the best commercial for Pasadena I've ever heard. I feel like we're done now. We're good. Covered Pasadena, special focus on District 7, which is the best part of Pasadena. It was really great. So I do want to take a minute to thank everyone from Kaiser Permanente, the school. It's taken a lot to put this together, and you know the security is an issue, and we set up all of the reservations, and they were incredibly helpful, and especially Rose. So thank you all very much. I'll take a minute to shout out to a couple of people who are here. We have my good friend Tammy Silver, who is your representative on PCC's board. So, Andy Wilson, thank you also for giving Andy a hard time. I asked him if he was here to heckle, so I like that he got heckled. Andy's also right now a double commissioner for our district. He serves on the airport authority. I don't know if you know that the city is one of the co-owners of the Hollywood Burbank Airport. He is our representative to that board. He's also serving on the task force that's looking at charter reform right now. You will likely have some charter reform measures in front of you in November. We have Marie Ferris, who's our design commissioner. Jennifer Tebow, who's our representative on the Commission on the Status of Women. Lawrence Lurvy from the Police Oversight Commission. Did I miss anybody? Thank you. Well, and Pam Thyrett, who is our district liaison and a rock star, in case you don't already know. I don't think Pam's in here. I think she's still out there manning the door. I do want to thank all of our commissioners, because there are a couple of dozen people who don't get a lot of visibility but help represent the district in all of the citizen commissions that form policy for the city, and we're grateful for their service. Come on up. So I think the idea was that we were going to sit and have a casual chat, but I feel like I'm going to stand. So feel free to sit if you want to. This is my friend Joaquin Siques. He is the new Director of Transportation for the City of Pasadena.
Thank you.
How long have you been the Director of Transportation?
I've been the director for 6 weeks now.
6 weeks.
Officially.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Is it good?
It is. Great.
So Joaquin has been with the city for a long time. How long?
20 years.
20 years?
20 years.
I didn't know it was that long.
It has been.
Where were you before?
Before the city, I was in the private sector. So after grad school, I went to the private sector for about 6 years and been with the city for 20 years.
Wow. Thank you for your service to the city. Good work. We're very excited to have him in this role. I think he was widely supported. I don't know if you know exactly how all this works, but the city manager makes all hiring decisions. And those are not, the city council sort of weighs in on what we should be looking for, but has no hand in the decision at all. We usually get, in fact, before Joaquin's announcement, we got a text saying, in 15 minutes, the press release goes out to say, the Director of Transportation will be. And that's how we find out who's going to be. So there was a giant cheer from the council when we found out that it was going to be Joaquin. And that was the hope, I think. So for those who don't know, will you just give us an overview of the Department of Transportation, kind of what it covers and doesn't cover, and then maybe how its work is broken up?
Yeah, definitely. So the Department of Transportation is made up of 5 sections. We have our transit section. I'm not sure if everybody knows Pasadena Transit, which runs a fixed route service and a dial-a-ride service as part of the Transportation Department. We have a parking division, and the parking division handles everything from our on-street meters, the collection of the meters, the maintenance, but also our parking garages and off-street lots. So we have a parking division that handles that. We have our engineering and operations division, and Nader Asmar here is our principal traffic engineer. And our engineering and operations division is really the arm that gets a lot of the requests from the public if it comes to our city service center app, or we just get calls to the department for anything from an all-way stop to addition of red curb, or can we have a crosswalk. That all comes through engineering and operations. That division also does the development of plans, so signing and striping plans, but also review of traffic control. So for every special event, any filming permit, the Rose Bowl activities, that all comes out of engineering and operations, as well as the operations of our traffic signals. The 4th division is our planning division, our multimodal planning division, and Jenny Cristales Ceballos is here. She's our planning manager, and our planning division really oversees a lot of our neighborhood traffic management programs, our speed hump program, and really the developing and moving forward our goals of being more multimodal, so that we're looking at not just cars, but also bikes and pedestrians. So that all comes out of our planning division. And the last piece is our administration division, which really makes sure that our bills are getting paid and our invoices are coming in. So, so that's our admin and finance side.
How many employees in the department?
We have 52 full-time equivalents, 52 employees.
Full-time equivalent.
Sorry.
This is government speak. Yeah, there was a moment in there that I wanted to stop and nod to. He made reference to the City Service Center app. And every time we do one of these meetings, I like to give a commercial for the app. If you don't have it, you should, on your phone right now, I won't be offended if you get it out and start looking. Go to the App Store and you can search Pasadena or City Service Center, and it'll come up. But it is the fastest and most direct way to get service from the city, and you do not have to be a tech whiz to use it. It's very, very user-friendly. So if a street light is out, if there's a pothole, if there is trash on the street, if something needs painting, if something's overgrown, doesn't matter what it is, you can come straight in, goes to the Department of Public Works, they route it to the right department, and the work gets done. And I always like to say, this is a true story, there was a time when there was a branch growing over the street light at the end of my street. There's a light at the end. The branch was growing over it. I put it in the Citizen Service Center app, went out and ran an errand to buy groceries, came back, and they were cutting the tree. Now, it may have already been planned, or maybe there was a crew that just happened to be there. It's not always that fast, but it often is pretty speedy. So if you don't have it, please get it. We'll talk about multimodal in a minute, which is some lingo we use a lot in the city, I think, and is important as a concept. But what do you see as the sort of big challenges you face coming in as the director in the city?
Yeah, there's definitely some challenges that we face as a department and really as a transportation industry when we're looking at really the city, and it's unfortunate, but funding is really one of the big key pieces that we're always looking at to see how we can make sure that we're building improvements, that we're conducting the outreach that we need. So funding is a big critical piece of that. But as we go through the different kind of goals of what our transportation department has, safety is always a critical piece of that, and it is a challenge. We are seeing more pedestrians being seriously injured or killed in traffic collisions. We're seeing those numbers go up, and it's something that we're always trying to address through various aspects, from from engineering, from our operations, from the education component, and we can go into a little bit more of that later, but that's one of our critical challenges. The other one for us is really making sure that we're meeting some of the goals that we have set as a city for sustainability. So as we look at our zero-emission vehicle transit fleet that is moving forward as part of the plan that City Council has approved, it's making sure that we can get the vehicles in, the infrastructure in place to be able to have a zero-emission fleet so that we can move people throughout the city without having to use fossil fuels and increasing greenhouse gas emissions. Another challenge that we really have to consider is when we start talking about multimodal, and we'll get into that in a little bit, is how to really create a network for pedestrians, for bicyclists, so that you as a resident or as a business owner, yes, you may have a car, you need to get from point A to point B many times in a vehicle, but in front of your home, when you're walking on the street, when you're going to the store, or as a business owner, when people are coming to visit your store, how do we make that space inviting? How do we make sure that it's safe? How do we provide connectivity so you're not walking, half mile to get across the street because it's a very busy street and there's only a certain number of crossing points? So a big challenge for us is to make sure that we can do that and really balance the need for safety and the need to create a better environment for pedestrians and bicyclists, while also balancing the motorist traffic that's there and really managing the speed of that traffic to make things safe.
You talked about the rising trend of pedestrian-involved collisions, which is a nationwide trend that we're seeing here in Pasadena. Do you have thoughts about what's causing that, where that's coming from?
There's a number of factors. What we've seen in Pasadena really over the last 4 years since COVID is the number of pedestrian serious injuries and fatalities have gone up. We were averaging about 1 or 2 a year, which is not great, but it's lower than some of our surrounding cities. But we saw in the last 4 years that those numbers are going up to 4 or 6 fatalities per year, and that's really alarming for us. Some of that is a result of speed. We've seen along our streets, speed has increased, especially post-COVID, as people, first when the roadways were cleared up, there's less traffic on the streets, people were moving faster. Now people are kind of staying in that mode of moving faster along residential streets. So that's one piece. There's also the vehicles themselves. Vehicles are getting bigger, trucks are getting bigger and heavier. Big push for electric vehicles, which is great. We want to make sure we're sustainable, but they end up being heavier vehicles. So we are seeing a lot of that as well throughout the nation. And really in Pasadena, we're trying to do what we can with the infrastructure to reduce speed so that we reduce that kinetic energy. There's a safe system approach that we've really been a part of making sure that we're looking at everything within the system. So from the education of motorists and pedestrians and bicyclists to the infrastructure to what technology we can use to improve safety on vehicles, all of that is part of kind of a really comprehensive solution.
I just want to say, we, of course, as you would expect, we sort of talked about what we're going to talk about, and I've already thrown in like 2 extra questions, and you're just rolling with it, so thank you. The zero-emission vehicle plan for the buses, the idea is that eventually we will have a hydrogen fuel-powered fleet, but that is a drastic changeover from where we are, and it includes needing to build a place to actually fuel them. Where are we in that kind of rollover plan broadly? You don't have to...
We have our first 17 vehicles that we are ordering now, so that's already been approved by City Council, of our full-sized buses. So those are the ones that run on our fixed routes that will be hydrogen. Likely will come in 2 batches, first 9 and the next 8, but we are in the process of designing a hydrogen fueling facility within the city so that we can refuel these buses using hydrogen. Our dial-a-ride vehicles, which are smaller, we call them cutaways. Think of it as like your airport shuttle type style vehicle. Those vehicles will be electric, battery electric. So we're using a mixed fleet of battery electric and hydrogen. And as the battery electric technology gets better so that we can run longer distances with the bigger vehicles, we'll have built the charging infrastructure to be able to manage either moving to fully battery electric or going with a hydrogen fuel cell. And that's all part of our new transit operations and maintenance facility, which is also currently in final design now. So there's a lot happening in that industry, and that's kind of why it's a challenge, because we're going to be breaking ground soon on building these facilities and getting these new fleets in our system so that we can meet those goals of zero emission on our transit fleets.
The conversion to a zero emissions fleet for the city is a challenge and a conundrum because we need special needs in our vehicles. So the police department needs things that can be circulating the city virtually 24 hours a day, our squad cars. And so far, there's not really battery power to sustain that. So what do we do with them? The buses are big and heavy, so what do we do with them? The fire engines in particular, I think, are the place where we're most far behind because they're so heavy. So there's not really, we haven't made that conversion yet. But every department is sort of trying to move the fleet to zero emissions. And I will say, the transit department was, under your predecessor and you, incredibly forward thinking about this in terms of bringing forward a comprehensive long-range plan to phase in, and we are well into that plan now. So thank you for that work. It's really important. Okay, multimodal. We talk about being a multimodal city, and this feels like insider lingo that we use a lot, but what does that mean?
So multimodal means the different ways of getting around. So we have vehicles, as a driver, you're a motorist. We have pedestrians, we have bicyclists, we have transit users, that's another mode. So multimodal is really, when we think of multimodal, and you'll hear me say many times complete streets, of how to create an environment where whether you're on foot, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're walking your dog or your children, or you're riding a bike with your children behind you, how we can create an environment where all of the roadway users of the public right-of-way, be it a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or a motorist, can maintain safe and can share that environment. Because again, it's really the safety aspect, which is the critical piece for us, because we're trying to ensure that we can have a network in place that's not killing people.
So we can walk, bike, ride, and drive with equal ease and accessibility for everyone, right?
Correct, yeah.
That is the goal. How do we achieve that?
It's really a multi-factored approach. We have to look at the different modes, and we have many plans that get us to individual components of each mode. So we have a bicycle transportation action plan. We have a pedestrian transportation action plan. We have a short-range transit plan, which, as a plug, we do have some meetings starting next week for input into our short-range transit plan to identify customer experience on buses and our routing. But we also really, all of this is under the umbrella of our mobility element in the general plan. So there's a guiding document that City Council has approved that really talks about the vision of the city. You know, a city where residents and people can circulate without cars. Again, not taking your vehicle away, but if you choose to, be active and be in the space, you can circulate without a car. And another component of this is this active transportation plan. So part of the planning process is to be able to look at these different individual modes and these different action plans that we've looked at various factors and combine them into one comprehensive active transportation plan that looks at access, that looks at connectivity for all the modes, that looks at safety, obviously, but also is looking at equity. When we think of all the different characteristics of Pasadena, and you know, we have our central business core, we have very affluent communities, we have some communities that are not as well off. We want to make sure that we're providing the same level of service and also addressing the needs of safety in areas that we may not be getting phone calls from about, you know, why is someone speeding on my street? So we take that proactive approach to go out into those neighborhoods, try to identify the issues, look at the collision history, and really try to focus on being able to implement solutions in areas where we're not getting feedback, but we are seeing the data showing us that there are issues there. So that is kind of one of the tenets of how we're trying to get to this better multimodal community.
Let's talk about a couple of the specific action plans that you referenced a second ago. So just in the last month or 6 weeks, we approved the pedestrian action plan, which is focused on pedestrian safety, but what's the sort of the thrust of what was in the plan?
So the plan itself was built on our previous pedestrian plan, and what it looked at is, again, looked at collision history throughout the city, looked at connectivity, and included a lot of community workshops and working with residents and businesses to identify goals. And what came out of this plan was a list of priority corridors to really determine where we can implement improvements to enhance safety along these corridors and really improve that connectivity and access. There's a list of about 20 corridors, with 10 being high priority. And with City Council approving that, then we can use that list to really go after funding for moving the next step into having that community conversation along these corridors, trying to develop the conceptual design, move into final design, and look for funding for construction. But really the goals of that plan were to, and really this is based on the feedback and the data that we received, was really to enhance safety, to improve that connectivity, provide access to transit, and really look at the system as a whole to create this network of pedestrian connectivity.
I will say, we made one change to that plan, which was that we made 12 high priority streets, because 2 in this district were not there and are high collision streets. So California from Los Robles to Lake, and Lake from California to the freeway were our high collision districts that were on the list of 20, but not on the high priority list. So they are now on the high priority list, and we're going to see all kinds of. So thank you. We also just adopted our citywide parking plan. For fear of hijacking the meeting on the parking plan, I'm just going to say we still have a ban on overnight parking. It did not go away. There was a lot of feedback about that, but the parking. You want to give a couple of points on the parking plan?
Sure. Yeah, the parking strategic plan really looked at ways we can improve the parking system. So we're looking at technology for the meters. We're looking at how we determine pricing for on-street parking, and really that demand that we have in commercial districts, and how we can better balance that to make sure that if you're coming into a commercial district for a short period of time, you can park on street and find a space. And if you're coming for a longer period of time, you can find an off-street space, like a parking lot or a structure, so that you're not circling around on city streets trying to find that one meter that's open, because the meter rates are so affordable compared to some of the other rates. So that's one piece of it. There is the bigger kind of look at our broader policies, and overnight parking was one of them, but just more of kind of our permitting process and trying to streamline that so it's easier for residents to get permits, and trying to find ways of streamlining that process. Trying to think of other components of the parking plan.
That was good.
Good summary?
You got the, yeah, sure. I mean, it's a big document, so we'll email it to you. Okay, and then the comprehensive transportation plan is, where are we with that? It's just about to start?
It is just about to start. So that's the active transportation plan. That's really the comprehensive multimodal plan. We've received grant funding for it. We're preparing our funding agreement now so that we can bring on a consultant on board and really start that engagement. And that's where we need the residents, we need the people that are coming to these meetings to really provide us feedback on the routes they use, what they like, what they don't like, and again, all modes. So we're not just talking about bicyclists and pedestrians, we're talking about motorists, we're talking about transit users. We really want to make sure that if you are driving, a quarter mile to get to the store, why choosing that mode versus walking or biking or an e-scooter or something, to really see if there's a way we can make the network better to incentivize people to get out of their vehicles, if they can, for short trips, and really be part of that solution to reducing those vehicle trips.
Thank you for the shout out to the e-scooter community. I don't know if anybody's here representing the e-scooter people, but we're nice. I do want to say, you mentioned grant funding. This is really insider baseball, but the DOT does an extraordinary job of bringing money into this city. A lot of the transportation projects that you see and the improvements in our city, the South Lake improvements that we're seeing right now, all of those pedestrian improvements are grant funded from the state, county, state, and federal level. And the department does, I think, an extraordinary job of it. And it's money that you're not paying directly. So thank you for that work. Is really great.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so one of the things that we have had for a while, in maybe 10 or 15 years, is a plan to make the city more bike-friendly. People feel lots of ways about bikes, but I think overall the philosophy among the council right now is that until we have a comprehensive network of bike paths that feel safe to use, we're not really going to know how much people will bike around the city until we create it. So we have fully leaned into, if you build it, they will come. So now we need to build it. And we are just beginning part of that process, which is the north-south greenways. So you've seen Cordova, you've seen Union. They're getting used. Everybody's getting used to them. We're all still trying to learn how they work and what the signals mean. If you're a driver or a bicyclist, you should understand the green paint means this is a place where you're likely to meet. So those are all the intersection places where you want to keep an eye out for the other kind of vehicle. And so we're all learning those kind of cues together because they're new. But particularly, we're just starting the sort of public dialogue about the greenways, the north-south. And we have 2 in District 7 planned. And so I thought it would be nice to sort of take a little bit of a deeper dive into those and then go from there. All
Yeah,
right?
that'd be great. And kind of twofold. We're going to talk a little bit about Greenways, and to do that here is Scott Johnson. He's our senior planner that'll be providing this next portion of the presentation to talk about Greenways themselves. But I also wanted to, as we're talking about staff and grant funding and really the team that's involved to really be able to go after these grants and look for opportunities and go after some of these funding opportunities. It's 90% of our funding for things that are built in the city and our capital improvement program for the transportation section is grant funding. So I think that's a big
90%.
90%.
That's huge.
So it's a big part of what we do, and it's through the hard work of all the staff that really allows us to go after those funding, and we've been very successful in getting those funds. With that, I will hand it off to Scott, who can talk a little bit about our greenways. And greenways are just one part of our overall network. So Councilmember Lyon had mentioned, we have the Cordova project, we have the Union Street, those were recently completed. We also have a Roseway network, which is really meant to be a low-stress area for bicyclists. So if it's not a striped bikeway, it's just streets that have been identified through this process of, you can ride your bike down the street with your family and feel comfortable because they're low-volume, low-speed streets. The intent for this Greenways is to kind of take that one notch further and really help create these north-south connections that are more than just a bike route, but a facility that allows bikes of all ages and abilities to really ride these corridors and feel safe. And it's a challenge because we do have some balances that we have to look at, volumes and speeds in order to make this network really complete. But it's all what Scott will talk about next. So let me hand it off to Scott to talk about this.
And I guess I'll say, just to flag, you made one last, come on up, you're ready. So there are identified streets that have been long identified in the study that are likely to be the first things we study for the Greenway. I would ask you to keep an open mind, and also know that could change. We could find that a street doesn't work, and so we're going to have to look at a different one. This is all going to happen in dialogue between the city and the community, and nothing's going to happen that everybody's not generally aware of and signed on to, right? So we'll get to the best consensus place we can be. But I think, I think sometimes when we talk about transportation plans and we start talking about the big plans we're doing, people get nervous that things are gonna happen without their input. And this is really the beginning of a long process of dialogue about this. So with that, we'll go to the presentation.
Yeah, take it away. Yeah, thanks for the great introduction. My name's Scott Johnson. I'm very new to the city, not new to transportation, but I believe this is my 6th week. So really excited to talk to you today about Greenways. Yeah. It's great to come out to meetings like this, meet everyone. I'm sure I will be talking to many of you in the future. To start off, just kind of wanted to cover briefly what I was going to touch upon. First, what exactly are Greenways? What are the benefits from them? The specific projects in Pasadena that we are proposing to do. Well, as was mentioned, we'll have lots of community input on those, and what that will inform the design of those. Additionally, touch upon briefly about a quick build opportunity of how that can inform the community outreach, and so you can really see something before we do something permanent. And then finally, what the schedule is for the public outreach. What exactly are greenways? Really, it's where you're emphasizing walking and biking, making it safer. Typically, you're going to have it on two-lane streets with calmer traffic, something similar to this picture here. Oop. Apologize for that. And it's not just about creating calm routes, it's about creating important connections. As Councilman Lyon mentioned, we want to create a network. Shown here is the bike map of the city. And you can see here in blue, we have a lot of good east-west connections, Villa, Cordova, Union Street, but you don't really have those north-south connections yet. And so shown here in orange are the proposed greenways that were identified in the bike plan, which I'll touch on a little bit more, but you can see now you start having north-south routes, east-west routes. If you're coming from the north of the city, you can get to job centers in the downtown area, and it's really much more connected, and really it's exponentially more beneficial as you start having this full network, and that's one of the ideas. And I think another thing to point out with the Greenway networks is the crossing of the 210, and looking to improve that. So if you're in the north of the city, you can cross that, because it's not the most comfortable experience if you are walking or biking currently. And it's not just about saying, oh, this is a calm route. We want to add safety features, both at the intersections and along the route. And just to give you a sense of it, these are just examples, and the idea is we want to talk to the community about what are the most appropriate measures, but you can have speed moderation treatments such as speed humps, cushions, tables, and those are basically vertical, it's a lot of different names starting out there, but it's basically vertical and devices that slow down traffic speeds. Traffic circles are another speed moderating device. Also at the intersections, we want to do different type of improvements, such as curb extensions shown here. This improves visibility, reduces the crossing distance, and also slows right turning speed as well. Also pedestrian medians. This is a feature, allows you to see traffic coming from one way, come to the middle, see traffic on the other way, and cross safely. Additionally, at Greenways, you might have a busier street that you're crossing. Say you're coming out, you're on a kind of a calmer street, you come across a 4-lane street, maybe it doesn't have a traffic signal, it's yield control, so that's when the main traffic doesn't have to stop. But on Greenways, you typically want to look at, if it's a big street, is it appropriate to install a traffic signal or other crossing device on that? This is a very unique treatment here. It's called a toucan signal that's used in some jurisdictions. But what it does is basically allows you as somebody biking, or if you're walking, you can cross the street, but a motorist would be diverted to make a right. And this is a really good treatment sometimes, if the intersection currently does not have a signal, and you don't want to incentivize additional vehicle traffic on it by adding the signal. So that's just one of many things that you can do. And really to kind of sum up some of the benefits, you're moderating traffic speeds and vehicle volumes for residents. It creates safer, more accessible walking and biking connections. And there can be great opportunities for artwork, greening the street. This is a painted curb extension shown here in this picture here. Now to kind of get into the specific Greenways projects for the city. So these routes were first identified in the 2015 bike plan. So specifically what we're talking about is Craig, El Molino, Wilson, and Sierra Bonita routes. So this is 2015. There was a follow-up feasibility study where we literally looked at the volumes on those roadways and also the volumes on the parallel streets. And we're also going to be doing some additional volume collection on there, to make sure and fully understand the impacts of that. And as is mentioned, we were talking about grant funding. We got Metro Measure R funding to make these a reality, $12 million, so that's really great. And I wanted to touch upon one kind of very kind of newer engagement method called quick build. And what is quick build exactly? It's basically using lower cost materials that you can implement quickly to test out things, evaluate. And just to give you a sense of that process, you might have a plan, say, for example, here we have the bike action plan. You can use quick build to then, once those corridors are identified in the plan, you can test out different features. We've been having some great informational conversations with cities like Seattle, Portland, who have really robust greenway networks. They have 30, 40 miles of greenway networks. And for example, they really like testing out diverters with quick build materials, something temporary. Instead of just estimating what the volume diversion might be or what the impacts would be to residents, you can test it out, see if it works, get that input. And if the community wants to proceed with it, then you can go to full implementation as shown here in the picture, where you might build it out with plantings, greenery, and so forth. But you can do this with all kinds of different methods. And just to give you some examples of quick build materials where you're testing out different features, this is from San Luis Obispo, painted curb extension. This can be very useful so people don't park at the corner to maintain visibility at the intersections. You can even do traffic circles with quick build. This is a very colorful one here. And as I mentioned, diverters are a really great thing to test out with quick build. Instead of making it permanent, you can test it out, see how it's working for the community, get that input, and see if it makes sense to make that permanent. And you're probably familiar with speed humps, but they also have quick build materials for that as well, and like modular materials where you can test it out, move it around, and that's another option. And specifically for Craig Avenue, we have some funding in place to kind of test out this kind of quick build materials, gather input. And the idea is to try out different components of this, based on input from the community, and evaluate it, and this can help inform all 4 of the Greenway routes. And this is one thing I just want to note here. It's not necessarily a quick build, but we're looking at installing a traffic signal at Craig and Orange Grove Boulevard. And that, if you're familiar with it, it doesn't have a signal now. It's a very wide road to cross. So, by installing a signal there, it makes it much more comfortable walking and biking across it. And I think a good way to think about this, we had a conversation with Seattle on intersections on a greenway. You'd want the intersection to feel comfortable for somebody walking with their child to cross safely. You're not having to run across the street, and that's one of the ideas. Just to quickly sum up the outreach, we are aiming to begin in fall, winter of 2024. We're going to establish an advisory committee, and the goal is, to talk to everyone, community, residents, business owners, do outreach all along these areas. We plan to incorporate the quick build idea specifically at Craig to get input on that, test out things before they're fully permanent, and then the goal would be to start construction in 2027. And that's it. And that's a link where we have the feasibility study, and all that stuff is online, all the plans that we talked about. And I think I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I think we didn't cover it a lot here, but one of the challenges is that one of the identified streets is El Molino, which in the north part of the city is a relatively low traffic street. In our part of the city, it's a relatively high traffic street because we get so much flow off of the freeway onto Glenarm and then on El Molino. So it probably will be a place where we'll do a lot of experimentation with quick build to see what we could do to alter that, to see if it works. Because then we also have to figure out how people are going to get across California and Del Mar, because right now there's not a light. So there's a lot to be figured out on El Molino. But we'll have this conversation over the next 2 or 3 years. So questions about anything in the district, transportation related or not? We have a mic over there for people, if you want to go to the mic, actually. Maybe. I forgot we had the mic.
Do I even need a microphone? I'm fairly loud.
Uh-oh.
All right, first of all, thank you so much for organizing this and having everyone here. So one question regarding specifically the roadways, like let's say San Pasqual. That's unfortunately kind of turned into more of a speedway recently as people are kind of blown through stop signs at, especially in the morning commute hours. I honestly don't feel comfortable biking on that, let alone driving on it, or driving on it, let alone biking on it. There we go. Are you guys going to be doing studies on these sort of areas to kind of revise these things, or possibly putting in some of the speed humps or other kind of traffic control measures? And then on a fun question, totally different, what's your moonshot? You're in a position now, you have a lot of amazing projects coming up. What are the massive dreams that you have down the line that you haven't even considered yet or talked about? So 2 questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. With respect to San Pasqual and some of the safety issues there, we have looked at that in the past, and we are looking at the volumes there and the speeds to see what direction it's going and if people are moving faster. There's many components. Obviously, there's the engineering side, and there's also the enforcement side. And unfortunately, enforcement cannot be there 24/7. That's what sometimes we get a request, and it's sometimes very limited to the effectiveness because it's only kind of effective when they're there or shortly thereafter as people realize that. But we are taking a look at that, and in the past we've done a neighborhood traffic management program there on San Pasqual where we looked at potential enhancements. This was I want to say about 10 or 15 years ago, and what happened then is the community didn't want to install many of the things. So this is a new, we're at a new time, there's different residents, and again, this is all part of the feedback and the process that we need, because we can come up with a number of potential enhancements, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the community, especially the people that live on that street, are really on board and have bought in, because many times, and depending on the street, it's a lot of the residents along that street that are speeding, trying to get to their home. Sometimes it's cut through, but many times it's the residents there. So we want to make sure that we have that engagement and do that process, and we'll note down San Pasqual. Moonshot. Oh, no.
Yeah, go.
So there's really 4 kind of building blocks that I see that we've been really within the department really focusing on. One is mobility, just as general. It's moving people safely and efficiently throughout the city. So that's really what we do as a department. That's one of our real core components. The second one is equity, really looking at how we can address the bigger picture of equity in everything we do. It's from our riders on transit. It's looking at the female transit riders and how safe they feel at stations. It's looking at safety, and I talked a little bit about collisions. I'll sum this up in a second with kind of the bigger vision goals. But on safety, we had talked a little bit about the equity, and one of the things, when we started really digging into the data on collisions, we noticed that while our black residents or African Americans make up 7% of the community, they make up 20% of our killed and serious injury victims. So there's a big disparity there. Why is that? Where are these collisions happening? What can we do through outreach? We also noted that our transient and unhoused make up a large percentage of, not a large percentage, but a percentage of our collisions, much more than you would think based on the percentage of unhoused that we have in the city. So we're working with our HOPE team, our PORT team, with PD, fire, public health, housing, to make sure we can provide messaging to the unhoused and transients and panhandlers to really to make sure they're aware of some of the hazards, so you're not walking down the street in the middle of the night and not being seen versus being on the sidewalk that's better lit. So and we're not talking crossing the street, I'm like, just walking down the street, things like this. So there's a lot that we're looking at from safety and equity. The third factor is kind of our customer service, or our public input components. That's the third building block of making sure that we're providing data and really being transparent with the public on why we're doing things, what the effectiveness of treatments are, how we can get the feedback from the public, and really not only the public engagement component that is part of all of our projects and programs, but also the customer service side. If you're on a bus, and really the face of Pasadena transportation at that point is the bus driver. If you're contesting a parking citation because you feel it was issued in error, our customer service representatives that handle those phone calls. If you're calling in and asking for an all-way stop, our engineers that that are part of that. It's really that customer-facing side that we're really trying to make sure that everybody's on board with that communication with the public and how we handle that. And the last piece is innovation and technology, and it's a component of that is using what we've been working on for many years with our traffic signal system to be able to make adjustments to signals to make the efficiency of the system work better, also improve safety by adding leading pedestrian intervals, which is the green walk indication before the green vehicle indication, things like that requires technology, being able to share our data so that so it can be used by vendors, by other people to help create solutions, and also just innovation in how we do things that may not be certainly technology, but quick builds of trying things out and trying to improve the system. All that to say is that not really a moonshot. I think something that we can really get to is that zero fatality number in the city. It's really something that has always been important to me as we talk to the families of people that have been killed. I'm sorry, I get choked up, but it's an impact on them. It's the child walking across the street that gets killed. It's the runner. It's there's things we can do, and there's things that we can. That's up to personal choice of either a driver or a victim in some cases. But we really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get that number down to zero. So that's not really my moonshot, but really my goal. Yeah.
And that's a fantastic answer. I was going to tease you about something. I was going to jump in with a joke, but now that's a great answer. So thank you. Next question.
Thank you, Jason.
I know where this is going to go.
Welcome to the two of you. My first choice for transportation, personally, is my bike. But I still drive my car. And I think back when this is before the 210 freeway went through town. I was riding in my dad's Carmen Ghia from starting at Sierra Madre Boulevard and heading west. And I was getting frustrated. I was embarrassed by how slowly he would go. He was going 35. But consistently, cars would race by, and I thought, Dad, you're so uncool. But he would just float right through all the signals at 35. And you did mention briefly something about timing, and I personally find it very frustrating, the stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. What are your thoughts about timing signals better so that we feel less frustration, we feel less of a need to race to the next signal to get through and have it be a more pleasant, copacetic experience?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's something that we do with through our traffic management center, through operations. We go through our corridors and retime the signals to create that platooning of, so you get the green signal at a certain speed, again, not going 55, it's a 35, but trying to manage the signal timing so that you have that green band as you're driving to make that movement more efficient. One of the things is much of our traffic is directional. So if you're going in the opposing direction during the AM peak, you will get a lot of red signals. Or if you're on Colorado Boulevard in old business districts, one of the complaints I get a lot from my friends that travel in Pasadena is, how come I'm stuck at a red light on Colorado Boulevard at every single red light? Well, it's because it's really a urban core that we want to keep the speeds down. We have pedestrian scramble signals, which is the diagonal crossings. We have longer signal cycles. But we also have other streets that you can use if you're trying to just bypass the corridor. We have one-way streets like Union and Green to get through that central core. All that to say is we are doing that with signal timing to adjust the signals and try to create that path so you're not stopped at every signal. You'll probably still have to stop at Lake. You'll probably have to stop at some of the majors because we do have to prioritize sometimes north-south versus east-west depending on volumes. But it's a very good point. We want to minimize that frustration of being stuck at a traffic signal.
Quickly, do you feel that you've come pretty close to optimizing the system now, or is there a fair amount of work to be done. And then the follow-up question would be, if there are streets that are timed to move swiftly through, how do we find out what those streets are so we can focus on driving on those streets?
The optimization.
And then we'll go to the next question.
The optimization is something that we're constantly working on. There's different, the different land use characteristics sometimes affects that. Sometimes we'll add left turn signals. There's different ways. So we're constantly going back to corridors and retiming them. We could talk offline later and talk about which corridors are the best ones, but mostly the higher volume ones. Yeah.
On the speeding thing, I want to say we have this is not me wagging my finger at you, but it is a little bit. We have a tendency to think of traffic issues and driving issues as a problem someone else is creating. So I always, when people come to me and complain, like, I was sitting forever in traffic getting across the city, I don't ask, but I often think, we were sitting in a car, right? So you were the traffic. Please do try to be mindful as you're driving, particularly of the speed issue. It is easy to kind of fly across the city, and I have been definitely guilty of it myself. My driving has radically changed since I've been in this position, I have to say, just because I see the data so much. So. Short of getting elected to office, because then we'd be running against each other, just try to slow it down in the city if you can. Matt.
Good evening. My name is Matt. Jason. Thank you, Jason, Joaquin, and Scott, for your presentation today. I'm really excited about the potential for additional bike infrastructure. I use my bike primarily for getting around the city. I drive when I have to, but find that with my e-bike, I can, if with a lot of effort to plan my route, take quiet streets, avoid busy ones, get to where I want to go. But it does take a lot of effort to get there, so I'm excited by the prospect of the Greenways and additional bike infrastructure to just where you can hop on and not have to think about how you're going to get there. My questions, and I have two, but they're somewhat related, are that Pasadena already has a Greenway, a very short one, but it has one on Marengo. The city classifies it that way, just north of 210. So I'm curious to know what the city has learned from that small greenway and how those lessons can be applied to the greenways that you are planning. And then the follow-up to that is, I want you to envision the future, and you've finished the greenways, and you're now sitting on the corner of one, and you look around. What do you see that shows that it was successful? How do you feel while you're sitting there? So what to you means that the Greenways was a success if you were there right now?
So the answer to the first question on that North Marengo, so for people that don't know, Marengo between Orange Grove and Washington, thank you, Rich, is technically a greenway. If you're going northbound on Marengo and you're at the signal at Orange Grove, you can only turn left or right as a motorist. As a bicyclist, you can go through. So at the ends of these treatments, at Washington and at Orange Grove, and only at those ends, we've installed these traffic diverters so that traffic will stay on Orange Grove, stay on the major streets, and not utilize that section of Marengo as a cut-through. What we've noticed is the volumes on that roadway segment, obviously, even though it's open all in between, you can come in and turn right and in or out. It's a two-way street other than that last little portion of the block. The volumes throughout the corridor are lower. People are driving slower. It feels more like a residential street and not a cut-through street. So the real goal of these greenways is to make that same feeling for the residents that live there. If you're on that last block, yes, you do have to go around the block to get to your house. That's one thing that when they first came in, we would hear from the residents about that. But the real the other side of that coin, or the real benefit, is you also don't have a lot of traffic in front of your house driving by at high rates of speed. So it's really something that we've seen as a benefit, and we're hoping that with these greenways and through the quick builds, we can try them out and see what we can do to manage that traffic. I guess the answer to your second question, I think for me, the vision of what it looks like is a greenway where a family can ride their bike. So it's not just the rider in Lycra trying to get 40 miles in on this ride. It's the family that's trying to get to school or trying to get to the market to pick up certain things, balanced with still the access to the residents there, because we're not closing off these streets. There's still homes that are there. There's still people that live there that have to use their cars. So there's no reason we can't integrate vehicles and bikes if people are driving at the right speed and aware of each other and sharing that road.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Rishi Burma. So I ride my bike often to JPL, to Caltech, and I want to sort of ask you a question about some of your metrics that you're using to sort of judge your plans. So you had mentioned safety, and I just wanted to kind of share how, we might need more metrics than that, or maybe we're already looking at that. But, what I want to get at is how can we measure and compare the transportation plans from a sense of like feeling, from a sense of our, experience. As a biker, we would, the analogy is like sharing a road on a bicycle with a car is like sharing a car with a locomotive, right? You might get to a stance where you have 0 fatalities, but it's still scary. So I want to sort of ask, how can we measure the actual experience? And maybe even aspirationally speaking, we can get to a sense of having a feeling of the transportation system and some of the ideas you mentioned being fun, being something that's a joyful experience. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good question, because a lot of creating a network is making it comfortable for the road users. And when we initially developed the Pedestrian Transportation Action Plan, the development of these roadways and greenways, that was the kind of intent, to look at locations where it's a low stress network for a bicyclist, so that you're not competing with as much high speed traffic, and it is part of that process. So I think, to your point, as part of this active transportation plan, when we're looking at the different metrics, how to measure that level of comfort, either through speed, through volumes, and those are the main components when we really look at that, is speed and volume, but also other factors, not only for bicyclists, but for pedestrians. It's the shade, it's the streetscape itself, and how that feels as someone that's out of their vehicle versus as someone that's in their vehicle.
Do we have a way of kind of doing a qualitative analysis? It's so quantitative, but a way of really knowing if a street works from a kind of comfort level, or is that more on kind of anecdotal thing that we learn from?
Yeah, and I think what we did with the plan, and what's that? I've got Rich DeLuvio here from our department, who was involved in the original plan.
It's an interesting question. We get a lot of this through public comment, but measuring it is maybe a different thing.
Yeah, one of the components, there's many, but one of the components we do look at is things like how many lanes is the street, how wide is the street, what is the posted speed limit, what is the actual, we call the 85th percentile, what 85% of the people are driving. These are all factors that go into what your stress level is, and the goal is to lower that stress level to where you want to get it to the fact, if you want these streets to feel like a residential street where you're keeping the speeds at or below what the posted speed limit is. You want to have them on probably streets that are 1 lane in each direction, things of that nature. It's just, those are a lot of the factors that we look at to where you even start.
Yeah, and we survey the experience that people are having.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's an interesting question that we should keep thinking about.
Thank you.
As you can tell, we're all like, huh. All right, next question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for putting this on. I really appreciate all the information that you presented. My name is Michaela. I use all modes of transportation in Pasadena, predominantly cycling and walking. And my first question is, how do we join the committee for the Greenways as a community member? Is it too late? Is it possible to join?
Is there a committee? I don't know. Is there, or are we doing it with community meetings?
There was something on there about joining a committee.
We're not quite there yet. So
Okay.
the Craig Avenue one is the first project that will have some quick build components, and it's kind of focused on Craig, and that's why we listed that one versus the other ones. But as we move forward, some of that Measure R Metro funding that we talked about, that $12 million, is to really begin this outreach phase. We had an initial phase of outreach with the bicycle plan. We've done some initial outreach the past year, just letting people know that this is coming, but we haven't kicked off that component of the work where we're actually doing the engagement. But definitely leave your information and we can include you.
If you're not signed up for the District 7 newsletter, do that as well,
Okay.
and maybe follow on social media.
Okay, it'll be on
We're
there.
Pasadena D7 on all social media. Finally we managed to get it on all of them. So you can follow us, and we will definitely be keeping people aware.
Okay.
So,
And I have one other question about implementation of the Greenways. How, or have you thought about it, or maybe it's already part of the plan of implementing this to the community? And I ask this only because cyclists, or I mean motorists, tend to get mad when things change on the road. And so how can we do this in a way that's safe for pedestrians and for cyclists, so where they're not just angry and acting out? Because I have seen that before as well.
No, that's a good point. Kind of how we message it, how we get the community feedback, and how when we implement these quick builds, which again are these paint and plastic treatments, that we're really making sure people are aware of not only the benefits, but if we're diverting traffic, what routes they should be taking. We want to avoid that frustration that leads to, traffic violence. And part of that is in the messaging and making sure that we get that feedback up front and work with the residents and the businesses to make sure they understand the reason we're doing this, first as a quick build and hopefully eventually as a permanent.
I think the point you make is the point of the quick builds, though, so that we can let people live with it and see what it's like and spend a few months with it. And if you still hate it, you can let us know.
Yeah.
But we can all kind of try it out, and without feeling like we spent $12 million to build a curb we all hate. So the quick builds are going to be an important part of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to just bend down a little bit. All right, so I really appreciate this session and the opportunity to share some thoughts and feedback and ask a question. I guess I'll preface by saying I'm a commuter by car and by bike. I used to bike to JPL, and I have since stopped because my fellow motorists are very aggressive, and Pasadena is a not so friendly bike place. So it's nice to hear that we're making changes on that front. I guess specifically some of the things that I am curious about is how we, if we build it, they will come. Like you said, how do we build the infrastructure to support parking bikes, right? So Union ends, first off, way too early. So it should go far all the way to the freeway. There's plenty of businesses there that in basically every other corner of the planet have already come to the realization that bikes and pedestrians increase their income as opposed to cars just taking up space. So how do we park our bikes there? That's my first question. I'll reserve my second question until you've had a chance to answer this one.
Yeah, and there's many ways that we're doing it as a department, both in the public right-of-way and in the private side of streets. So through the public right-of-way, we install bike racks really by demand. As we get calls that we see that there's areas that people would like bike racks, we'll look at the area, make sure it fits and makes sense, and we can install bike racks. And that's an ongoing program that we do annually. In the private sector, when developments come in and new projects come in, most of the time they're conditioned to have some type of on-site bike parking facility as part of their development. And again, it depends on the development itself, but it's a big part of that. We're also looking to see how we can use our off-street infrastructure that's city-owned, like parking garages, to make space for bicyclists that is a secure space. So it's not just leaving your bike in some dark corner and you may come back and only have a wheel left. It's really looking at how we can create that space through lockers, and not kind of the monthly locker program that Metro uses, but something that's more dynamic, so we could have that ability to park bikes the same place we park cars. And we've talked in the past with the businesses about using on-street facilities for biking that's in the roadway versus on the sidewalk. We'll have to revisit that. With COVID, really things changed with the dynamic of what the curb is used for and that space is used for with our on-street dining. And it's something that is always a discussion point, and we keep trying to remind the businesses that, if you can put 5 or 6 bikes in one parking spot, that's 5 or 6 more wallets coming to your store. So it's the ability to to kind of have that messaging so we can have more of that bike parking.
This has been coming up a lot in the conversation around the Greenways, so I think we'll hear more about it. Part of it is I was looking to see if Pam was here, the council office interacting with the business improvement associations, both in the Playhouse Village and on South Lake. That's a conversation we can be having with them. And certainly if you know a place where you want in the public right away, you can let the department know directly.
That's
Let
excellent
us
to
know,
hear.
and we'll talk to them.
Yeah, because I had my bike stolen week 1 after moving here, so, and then I bought a new
Welcome
one.
to
But
Pasadena.
I guess that sort of lends itself to my second question. I said I'm a motorist these days, but I do bike to Caltech as well, and I typically do so down El Molino. And I know you mentioned that the residents of El Molino might want to speed to get home or to get where they're going. At the end of the day, they're still breaking the law. And so I guess the way I look at this is there's children, there's schools there. I've seen near misses with kids. I've seen near misses with elderly women crossing the street over on Hudson at Hudson crossing Walnut, as well as all along Corson. Anything on Corson is a disaster as a frontage road. So I guess what measures are we looking at in terms of lane narrowing or reduction for frontage roads and one-way streets to really corral traffic to be slower? And then on streets like El Molino, or even where we're building these north-south greenways, why aren't we looking at things like segregated and protected bike lanes, as we have done on Union, that are so much more effective? As a biker, I feel immensely safer if there's a physical barrier between me and a multi-ton vehicle that turns me to, a meat crayon, pardon my French.
Let me address, clap away. Let me address one part of that before you talk about the engineering solutions. Just in defense of the people who live on El Molino, they are not the ones speeding down El Molino, and they are sitting around this room and are often at the microphone talking to me about the people speeding down El Molino. So that will be a big part of this conversation in terms of making this safe. You can talk more about this from the transportation perspective, but I'll say the solutions to these things are multifaceted, and so it's not always an engineering solution. We do have to be able to get around the city. Some of it is about education, some of it is about changing the way we do things, which is why I ask you to slow down and to be the person who thinks about slowing down. And part of it is about changing the engineering of the city, and so how do we make those decisions?
And you bring up a good point about the residents and let's take El Molino as that example of the volume of traffic on El Molino. Something like a greenway that could really reduce that volume helps everybody. It helps the bicyclists, it helps the residents that live there because there's less speeding traffic on that street. The engineering side of why not a protected bikeway versus a kind of this bike boulevard or mixed-use facility, a lot of times has to just do with the width of the roadway. El Molino has parking on one side and a 2-lane street, and in order to put in that type of facility, you're really narrowing down the street to either not have parking in front of residential, which is a difficult sell.
It's a good decision.
Yeah, and or having a single lane one-way street, which is also a difficult.
Good decision.
So, but this is where we have to engage, because I 100% hear you, and there are other people in the community, and maybe in this room, who feel differently.
Sure.
And so it's about, this is why we're starting this period of dialogue, to say, what can we live with? Is El Molino the street where we do this? Can we control the traffic enough on El Molino? Because we really need to bring down the vehicle trips by like 300% or something. I mean, to make it a safe greenway.
I appreciate your answers to my questions, and I look forward to seeing the progress on it. I guess the last comment I'd make walking away is that as someone who works in a chem lab, I've had strong acid spray up in my face, and I was glad I had safety glasses, but I was even gladder that I was doing it in a fume hood where there's an engineering control that protected me as the user, so it didn't even have to get that close to my face. And I ask that maybe we think about that more when we design things, because there are other ways for motorists to go. They might be longer, but there are other ways. The whole city's built around them.
Point
Very
taken.
little is built around bikers.
Heard for sure. Thank you.
A couple things. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing progressing in the city for bicycles. I've been here about 12, 15 years. New bike lanes, a lot of developments that protect the bikes in certain bike lanes. And then to hear you guys talk about what you have in mind and what your dreams are and stuff, I'm very excited. Where I'm concerned is enforcement. Yesterday, I rode down Marengo, and there were dumpsters in the bike lane. They could have been at the curb, they could have been against the curb, they were in the bike lane. Then I ride a little bit further, people have their cars parked with their outside wheels in the bike lane. Then I rode a little further, somebody's making a delivery, he's parked in the bike lanes. People who drive cars get very upset when I move out of the bike lane and move into the roadway because that's theirs. And so what I'd like to see is some kind of involvement with your department, with the police department, with the sanitation department. Let's get what's in place working for the cyclists. And the other thing I'd love to say is also on that bike ride yesterday, I took some pictures of piles of debris in the bike lane and submitted it, and it's already...
See?
Yeah. Love it.
Public Works. There they go. Thank you.
Yeah, the app is awesome.
Really heard.
John. Hi,
Tammy.
Tammy Silver. When the...
Sorry, can I get a response real quick?
Yes, regarding the interdepartmental coordination, I'm glad you bring that up because that's something that we want to hear from the community. If there's a certain spot where the dumpsters are coming out, they're going to come out every Monday unless we actively go out and talk to the businesses as we did on Union Street and talk to the pickup for the refuse, because it's not all city pickup, it's different companies, to make sure that they know that they cannot put their containers there. So we will do that. Yes.
Literally, there is a safe place to put it, and they want the guy that comes in the truck not to have to go out of his way.
So,
And we
maybe
will
after-
keep having the conversation about all of that, particularly around enforcement too. Pam just told me that we said we would be out of here by 7:30, so Tammy, ask a fast question.
I just wanted to address the speaker that was wondering what kind of qualitative data could be gathered. And I remembered a number of years ago, Bicycling Magazine did a story on this topic, and they said one marker of a success is how many women are cycling. So I think that should be something, looking at women. So, and then we also might want to look at children. Wouldn't it be awesome if children could ride their bikes to school instead of having pickup lines?
Yes. I mean, for me,
Thank you.
For me, that's the moonshot, is if we see people, an 8-year-old biking down our streets, which you would not see now. So we're going to call that. We'll take questions at the end and talk. And thank you all for coming. Good to see you. And please come to every first Saturday of the month. We have a coffee at 9 a.m. at Paso Royo on South Lake where we can talk about this stuff more freely. All right? Thanks.